Close that. All right, so thank you again, everybody, for joining us this morning so we can talk a little bit about the 2019-2020 Community Grants Request for Application, which is now available on our website. If you haven't taken a look, you can find it under the How to Apply for Grants section on KomenNewEngland.org, and all of the information you need is right there. So today we're going to go over a couple of things. We'll talk a little bit about background of the affiliate and of the RFA, the goal, our process, the funding priorities, and the limits. Request for applications, a little bit more detail about objectives and how we work through those. And then I have some grant writing tips that will hopefully help you out. I know many of the folks on this call are current grant recipients or recent grant recipients, so thank you for your partnership and for joining us again. And we hope to have some new folks as well. So we'll go ahead and get started. Is probably familiar with this information, but Susan G. Komen is the world's largest breast cancer organization, and Komen has funded more than $956 million in research and provided more than $2.1 billion in funding to screening, education, treatment, and psychosocial support programs. Susan G. Komen started in 1982 when our founder, Nancy G. Brinker, promised her sister, Susie Komen, that she would end the disease that claimed Susie's life. Locally, our affiliate, Komen New England, serves Vermont, New Hampshire, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Maine. And we have funded nearly $12 million in community breast health programs in Connecticut, $9 million in Massachusetts, $8 million in New Hampshire and Vermont. We have not funded in Rhode Island to date, so we are looking forward to doing that in the near future. And in Maine, I don't actually have the number for that because that is a new part of our merger, so I'm going to need to look at that and add this to the slide. And Komen New England, as an affiliate, has contributed more than $8 million to support breast cancer research. Komen has set a bold goal to reduce the current number of breast cancer deaths by 50% in the United States by 2026. So with that bold goal in mind, the aim of our community grants is to reduce breast cancer mortality by addressing disparities, increasing access to quality and timely care, and improve outcomes through patient navigation. So any applications that are submitted should support the aim of the Community Grants Program, which all works together to work towards the bold goal. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the breast cancer continuum of care. We want to make sure that the women that we see and the men that we see stay within the continuum of care. And the affiliate aims to fund a diverse collection of programs serving different stages of the continuum. So we are not just focused on screening or diagnosis or treatment or follow-up and survivorship. We're really looking at funding programs throughout the continuum of care. So our application process goes like this. First, we work on developing the RFA. The RFA has not changed, the majority of it has not changed since last year. There are a couple of things that are a little bit different from last year's RFA. But each summer we kind of spend a few weeks talking with people in the, throughout our service area, with, physicians, with breast cancer, with navigators, with survivors, with all sorts of people to make sure that our RFA is reaching the critical needs within our community. After that, we receive letters of intent and applications. So the letter of intent is different this year. We did not require one last year. It is just a form. It's a SurveyMonkey questionnaire. The link is on our website, and I'll also give that to you in another slide shortly. It just asks a few basic questions about the overall scope of your project. What I found last year is that once applications had been submitted, there were a few that just were not for projects that fit within our funding priorities. And for anyone who has gone through this process before, it is a time-intensive process. So in order to eliminate people having to go through the whole application process only for me to find out that we can't fund them anyway, I wanted to get the letters of intent in advance so that we make sure that we are receiving applications that can go to our review panel. So the letter of intent is due October 30th. And then after that, we would invite you to apply based on your letter of intent. Applications are done in GEMS, our grant e-management system, which is our online grant portal. And those are due November 28th. November 29th. After the applications are received, it goes through the compliance review, which is done by Komen staff, just to ensure that the projects are within our funding guidelines. And then it goes to our independent review panel. So these folks are not Komen staff or board members. They are people within the community who have either expertise in breast cancer, who are survivors, who are researchers, who work for departments of health. They have some connection, personal or professional, and they're the ones that review our applications. They also rank the applications, and they set forward the board, the grant slate, which goes to the board for board approval. Once the board has that, they hopefully approve the whole slate, and then we award grants and execute the contracts. So here are the important dates. The letter of intent deadline is October 30th of this month. It's coming up in a couple of weeks. Like I said, it's really just a few questions asking about the scope of the project. It shouldn't take too long to get that done. The grant application deadline is November 29th at 5 p.m. and that is a hard and fast 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time deadline. Then the Komen staff completes the compliance review, which is done by December 15th. And then the grant applications are reviewed by our peer review panel. And that happens from mid-December through February. In early March, the grant slate is approved by our affiliate board of directors, and then grantees are notified between early March and mid-March. After that, you receive your grant contract. First checks are issued following the execution of the contract. It's important to remember that grants, the contract can take up to 6 weeks for it to be fully executed. So just keep that in mind. Once you get that contract, you might want to jump on that to get that completed so you receive your first payment. 6-month progress reports would be due in mid-November. And then site visits will happen, that should be fall of 2019, not fall of 2018. And then the deadline to request a no-cost extension, should you need one for whatever reason, if you had a gap in hiring, if your project was a little bit late in getting off the ground, whatever it might be, the deadline to request an extension is March 1st. And then the final report, I'm sorry, these dates are wrong, March 1st of 2020. And then the final report and return of unspent funds due would be done in May of 2020. So you may already be familiar with our community profile. The community profile is really how we determine what our funding priorities will be. The last community profile was published in 2015, and we had community profiles for Connecticut, Massachusetts, Vermont, and New Hampshire, and a short one for Maine and Rhode Island. Those documents have since been merged, and that should be available on our website now. So it's just one document. The funding priorities have not changed within the community profile. We just put all of the information together into one space. So the community profile is an assessment of breast cancer and breast health services in our area, so we can ensure effective and targeted efforts towards meeting the needs that we find. It's a rigorous collection and analysis of data. It takes about 1.5 years to write the community profile. Some of you may have been involved in it. The next one will be started next summer, so some of you may be called upon for some information and for your expertise in the area to help us determine what those critical needs are. Through the community profile, we've come up with our affiliate target communities. In Connecticut, it's by county, and it's Fairfield, Hartford, Litchfield, New Haven, and New London. In Massachusetts, it goes by city, so Boston, Springfield, and Worcester, and we kind of consider the greater Boston area, greater Springfield, greater Worcester areas. Rhode Island and Maine and Vermont and New Hampshire, we're actually going with the entire state as our funding priorities. There are targeted areas listed in the community profile, but for the purposes of our community grants, we're really looking at projects across the state. And our funding priorities, like I said, they haven't changed from last year. They are patient navigation, reducing barriers to care, and breast cancer education that leads to measurable action. So funding priorities should seek for applicants to use evidence-based interventions and methods. For example, evidence-based projects that reduce barriers to quality breast cancer care. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And you can find full definitions of the funding priorities within the RFA. So instead of tradition or gut reaction or single observations as a basis for making decisions, evidence-based practices have been shown through scientific research to consistently improve measurable outcomes. So we want to fund programs that use evidence-based practices that ladder up towards our bold goal, because these will be the programs modeled after those that have been researched and shown to be effective in achieving their desired outcomes and ultimately saving lives. You can find a full list of our allowable expenses within the RFA as well, but just to go over it briefly, key personnel and salaries, consultants and subcontracts, supplies, travel, patient care, other direct project expenses, equipment not to exceed $5,000, and indirect costs not to exceed 15% of direct costs. Our community grants program does not fund research. We also do not fund education regarding breast self-exams or use of breast models. We will not fund development of educational materials that either duplicate existing Komen materials or for which there's not a demonstrated need. So if within your program you do want to develop education materials, just talk to me about it. There may be an existing resource from Komen already. We are also not funding education via mass media, health fairs, and material distribution through our community grants program. We also want to make sure that when we are funding education, it's not just education for education's sake. We are looking to fund programs that have one-on-one, evidence-based, culturally relevant education designed to result in documented age-appropriate breast cancer action, which kind of goes back to why we're not funding health fairs. We want to make sure that when education is provided as something that Komen is funding, that it is leading to an age-appropriate breast cancer action. Another note about education materials, we only fund programs that use educational messages and materials that are consistent with Komen messages. You can find what those messages are on the Komen website, and the link is there. And Komen will not fund education programs that teach or endorse the use of monthly breast self-exams or use breast models. Just to make sure that's clear. I know I mentioned that already. These are our funding limits for this year's RFA. In Connecticut and Massachusetts, the maximum that we are funding is $45,000 per project. In Rhode Island and Maine, it's $15,000, and in Vermont and New Hampshire, it's $20,000. So to submit your application, all proposals will be submitted online through GEMS, and that is affiliategrants.komen.org. The letter of intent, however, is your first step, and that must be completed by October 30th. And the SurveyMonkey link is there. It's also on our website under how to apply for community grants. So please go ahead and fill that out as soon as you can so you can get started on your application. Applications must be received on or before November 29th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. It's also important to remember that submission is a two-step process. First, the project director completes the application and then changes the status to authorized signature required. And then your organization's authorized signer must then log in and officially submit the application. So keep that in mind. It can take a little while for you to track down the authorized signer in your organization. I know that is an issue sometimes, so be sure that you are not changing that status at 4:55 p.m. because it might not get in on time. So please allow time and monitor the authorized signer's schedule to ensure they're able to submit the application before the deadline. If you have any trouble with the application, with the submission process, whatever it might be, before you get frustrated, please reach out to me and let me know what's going on, either by phone or email, and I'm happy to help you out however I can with the process. The other thing to keep in mind that those of you who are familiar with GEMS will know is that it can be a finicky system. GEMS is almost always down for maintenance on Mondays, usually from morning until about lunchtime. So don't plan to do it Monday morning. Keep that in mind that it could be down. Also remember to save your information frequently so you don't lose anything. And that will, I think, help you out a lot as you're going forward. But again, if anything comes up along the way and you need some help, just let me know. So the letter of intent, this is what it looks like. There's that link again. Again, it's on our website. It's 10 questions total. 5 of them, I think, are contact information. So it's 5 questions about the actual scope of your project. It does also ask for a general sense of your budget. We're not looking for a line item budget, and it can be changed. So if you put something in there and then your budget, once you're fleshing it out, is different, that's fine. We're just looking for a general sense of what that will be in the letter of intent. So as you're going through the RFA, there are a series of questions, and you'll see what they are there. There's the statement of need, the project design, organization capacity, monitoring and evaluation, sustainability, and community engagement. These are the questions that you'll see in the RFA. There are a series of questions after each of these headlines. And this is what the grant reviewers will be reading when they receive your application. This is what the project work plan page looks like in GEMS. In the past, you could define your own project goal, but because we want all of our community grants to be working towards our bold goal, there's one universal goal for all of our community grants, which is reduce breast cancer mortality by addressing disparities, increasing access to quality and timely care, and or improve outcomes through patient navigation. So that field is already filled in for you. Under that project goal, however, you can have however many objectives it is that you are setting out to achieve. Just keep in mind that objectives should only be included for proposed work to be achieved using Komen funding. So if you have other projects or other objectives under your project, but they are not, that's not what you're applying for funding for, don't include those. This is only what you are looking for Komen funding on. So for each objective that you create in your application, you'll report back on key accomplishments, upcoming tasks, and program challenges. So if you create 5 objectives, you will need to report back on all 5 objectives when it comes time to your mid-year report. So here are just some examples of objectives. By September 30th, 2019, PINK organization will conduct 10 group breast cancer education sessions, reaching at least 200 Black African American women in Greene County. That gives all the information you need about what this objective is. It has the numbers for the number of group sessions, the number of people targeted. So it's a well-written objective. The other one is by March 31st, 2020, Northern Region Hospital breast cancer patient navigators will reduce the average time from abnormal screening mammogram to diagnostic conclusion from 65 days to 30 days for women in counties of Jackson, Morse, and Smith. Again, it's well written. It gives good information right there, easy to understand what the objective will be and how it will be measured. You'll find in the appendix for the RFA, the reporting metrics are listed in there. All grantees will report on demographics of those served to the best of your ability. You have the reporting metrics, so you'll know what's being asked of you. I understand that not all organizations are able to capture information the same way. So if this is something you have a concern with, get back to me and we can talk that out. This gives you an example of what those service reports will look like under each objective. So it has the assistance that you may be providing, transportation, translation services, copay, deductible assistance, whatever that might be, the total that you are providing, and it's broken down by race and ethnicity. Again, you'll only see the service reports that are based on the objectives that you set out. So if your objectives are based on diagnosis, then you'll see a screen like this. So you'll be reporting back on time to diagnosis, diagnostic facility accreditation, if diagnosed was the patient referred for screening, and the diagnostic service provided by race and ethnicity. This is just a screenshot. There's more in the diagnostic services report. Again, this is just to give you an idea of what we'll be looking for in terms of reports should you receive a Komen grant, so you can have a good sense of what we're looking for even before you start writing that application. Again, going back, we went over this a little bit, budget already. Those are our what we will fund, key personnel and salaries, consultant subcontracts, supplies, patient care, other services, indirect costs, and the budget pages will roll into the project budget summary. So this is what the budget for patient care will look like. This hopefully will help a little bit in terms of reporting, because I know everybody, lots of places code things slightly differently or define things slightly differently. So hopefully this will help make it clear. The patient care cost page features drop-down selections for 4 areas: screening, diagnostic, treatment, and transportation. You'll see costs broken down to make it easier for users to determine how many services are proposed and to ensure alignment between the project work plan and the budget. If you do have translator services as one of your budget items, they should be included under consultant subcontracts if the grantee is working with a specific individual or an organization who is not a staff person. If the translator is a staff person, you include those costs under key personnel and salaries. So this is the project budget summary. This will take the information that you have put in on the other budget pages, and it will populate it into this one. So this information helps the reviewers determine the amount of support the organization is providing toward the program beyond simply relying solely on Komen funding. So when you can provide that information, it speaks to the long-term sustainability of the program and the value that the organization and senior management see in the program by investing resources into it. So cash are any monetary funds for the program from outside sources, such as other grant awards. And in-kind are both services and supplies provided by the organization itself and from outside sources to support the program. You'll also see as you're going through the RFA, there are a few supporting documents that we do ask for. If you are working with any other organizations to refer patients or whatever it might be, we ask for letters of support or a memoranda of understanding, and those go onto the project profile page in GEMS. If you are asking for funding for key personnel and salaries, that would go, we would look for resumes or job descriptions for those roles. And we also look for proof of tax exempt status, and that goes in the project budget summary page. So this is a condensed list of grant policies. Again, everything that you need to know can be found in the RFA. The project must occur between April 1st, 2019 to March 31st, 2020. And this is really important. No expenses may be accrued against the grant until the contractual agreement is fully executed by both your organization and the affiliate. And this process can take up to 6 weeks. So what that means is that if we do not have a signed contract from you until June 1st, for example, you can't go back and retroactively apply expenses that were incurred April 1st to May 31st, because no contract was in place at that time. Grant payments will be made in installments pending compliance with grant agreement and receipt of satisfactory progress reports. So your first installment would be made after we receive the fully executed grant contract, and that will be for half of the total that you are funded. And then the second half would be paid out after we receive your progress report, and that is approved. And I mentioned before, the grantees may request one no-cost extension of no more than 6 months per grant. You just need to get in touch with me and we can talk through that process if that's necessary. You can also find a copy of the grant contract at the back of the RFA. So you can take a look at that and make sure that you know, the information in there works for your organization. Individuals are not eligible to apply. Applications must be received from nonprofit organizations with 501c3 status or a governmental organization with 170c1 status serving residents of Fairfield, Hartford, Litchfield, New Haven, New London counties in Connecticut, Boston, Worcester, Springfield, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. And eligibility requirements must be met at time of application submission. So if you are working on 501c3 status, that would need to be done before you submit your application. There are also insurance requirements. If you do receive a grant, a certificate of insurance is required. This is the one thing, if I had to say anything that holds up the grant contract process, it would be this. So if you start thinking about this now, it would help make a smooth grant execution come, March. So just take a look at what is listed there. It's also in the RFA and in the grant contract, so you can make sure that your organization could provide a certificate of insurance that lists these limits here. I'm not going to go through them. It's all insurance talk. Okay, so once you have submitted your application and everything is into GEMS, you can breathe a huge sigh of relief. And it then begins the review process. I've talked about this a little bit, but just to go over how this works, the compliance review is done by affiliate staff and our grants committee, which ensures that all applications adhere to RFA requirements. There were a few applications last year that went back to organizations during the compliance review process because it's something that we were not able to fund per our RFA requirements. So if you think you have something that is a little bit questionable, that we'll catch those in the letter of intent process, but feel free to talk to me about this. Our review panel is are diverse, representing different cultures, racial and ethnic groups, geographic areas, professions, and life experiences. And they do include experts and community reviewers. So experts are professionals with experience working in breast cancer or public health, and community reviewers are survivors and members of target population and communities. Like I said before, it's not reviewed at all by affiliate staff, or not. I review it for compliance, but not for scoring or our board of directors. So a minimum of 3 review panel members score each application. And then once that's done, the review panel meets to discuss the grant applications, and they determine the slate of projects to present to the affiliate board of directors. The board of directors then votes to approve the grant slate. When reviewers are reviewing the applications, they score applications against the ideal application rather than scoring applications against each other. So scoring against the ideal application means that the best application that may be read when using the scoring anchors might earn a score of 5 or 6. It's a 1 to 7 scale. It should not receive a score of 7 simply because it's the best application reviewed. Scores of 6 or 7 are fairly rare and reserved for truly exceptional and ideal proposals. So once we get through the process, if you realize that you don't have all 7s, that's totally okay and to be expected. So the reviewers are looking at these different areas, these criteria for review. Impact, how successful will the project be at increasing the percentage of people who enter, stay in, or progress through the continuum of care, thereby reducing breast cancer mortality. Statement of need, how well has the applicant described the identified need and the population to be served, including race, ethnicity, economic status, and breast cancer mortality statistics. Project design, how likely is it that the proposed activities will be achieved within the scope of the project? Organization capacity, to what extent does the applicant's staff have the expertise to effectively implement all aspects of the project and provide fiscal oversight? Monitoring and evaluation, to what extent will the documented evaluation plan be able to measure progress against the stated project goal and objectives? And then we have, they were new last year, sustainability. This goes back to the budget. How well is the program being supported by the institution? And community engagement. How is the organization actively involving the community and ensuring that the people most at need are coming in to receive services? And you can see the weight that each question receives. They're almost all 15%, except for the statement of need. These are the review scoring anchors. So like I said, it's a 1 to 7 rank. And reviewers score applications against an ideal application, not against each other. So most applications end up in, between, 3 and 6, I would say, with their scores. And then those scores are weighted based on the percentages that you just saw. And that's how we get our grant slate, by ranking them based on those numbers. The other thing that I just wanted to mention, and I will go over this a little bit more, is that when the reviewers are looking at it, it's really important for you to keep in mind that the reviewer may or may not be within your service area or be very familiar with your service area. All of the reviewers have read our community profile, so they understand the need, but they may not be intimate with your organization. So it's really important to make your case strongly so that they can all understand. I am going to do my best to ensure that all applications are read by at least one reviewer who is in their area, but just keep that in mind. So just going into a couple of grant writing tips. When you're planning your proposal, read everything, please. The RFA is there for you to read. Please read it all. It will help you tremendously in writing your proposal. And read the community profile as well. At the very least, read the executive summary. The community profile is a very long document. If you're not familiar with it, that's okay. But try to familiarize yourself with the areas in it that deal with your area, because that will make an impact on the strength of your proposal. And consider the funding priorities carefully and discuss ideas with decision makers in your organization. We've had instances where people are almost done with their application and then realize that somebody else has a totally different direction that they want to go into. So discuss these ideas in advance so that you have enough time, all the time that you need to fill out your RFA. The other thing that we would love to encourage is to explore opportunities for collaboration. We do have a number of grantees that work together really well, but definitely look into that if that is a possibility for you, and work across departments to develop your proposal. It's never good to work in a silo. And start early. Like I mentioned before, GEMS can be finicky. It is down for maintenance once a week, generally on Mondays. But allow yourself enough time to craft an innovative application that's responsive to the identified needs in the community. So for your abstract, just keep in mind that first impressions are really important with this. This will be the first thing that reviewers read. And keep in mind as well that not all reviewers read all of the applications. Each reviewer will probably read, depending on how many applications we have, between 6 and 10 applications. So it's really important that the abstract makes your case, because all of the reviewers will read the abstracts at least, so everybody is familiar with the different projects. But make that the brief statement of your case and a summary of your proposal. But also be compelling and be concise. Don't exceed 1,000 characters, about 200 words. And again, keep in mind that not all of the reviewers are going to be familiar with your organization. And since our affiliate has recently merged from a number of other affiliates, from Komen, Connecticut, and Komen, Massachusetts, and Komen, Vermont, and New Hampshire, this hasn't necessarily been the case in the past. Reviewers were generally a bit more familiar with the different organizations. So just make sure that you're being very compelling and concise about how important your project is. So abstract should include the need to be addressed by the project, a description of key activities that will be funded by Komen, the target community served, the expected number of individuals, and the expected change the project will likely bring in the community. And then the evaluation is also incredibly important, because we want to make sure that the projects that we are funding can be evaluated and can show the success that they've had. So when thinking about how you evaluate your program, what happened, how it happened, how much, where, to whom, these are important questions when you're looking at the monitoring and evaluation section of your program. For the impact section, we want to know about changes in behavior, knowledge, attitudes, beliefs, and change among individuals, providers, organizations, communities. I think this is something that many of our grantees are really great at, about making changes amongst their communities and organizations with the services they provide. So make your case for that. For budget and expenses, the affiliate wants to fund high quality, impactful programs. So projects become reality because the idea is sold, not because the proposal is cheap. We're not looking to fund the most programs with the least number of dollars. Be realistic though, ask for what you need, and justify your expenses. Do the cost follow with the narrative project description? And is an estimated expense calculation and an explanation about how the funds will be used and why they are necessary to achieve proposed objectives included? Again, you want to make sure that when you are reviewing your RFA before you submit it, before you submit your application, that you're looking at it with an outsider's eye, and make sure it's clear to an outsider how those funds will be used. So if you, for instance, have funding for salary, make sure you make it clear what that person is doing, and justify the funding for that. Again, read the RFA carefully and follow all the directions in it. Be innovative, realistic, and specific. Write clearly, use active rather than passive voice. Please, please, please avoid jargon and acronyms. We do get a lot of applications with that in it. And while our reviewers will know more or less some of the jargon that you use, they might not know everything. So terms like EHR, electronic health record, NCI, they probably know that one, National Cancer Institute, but just think about that, CAD, CAD, just think about writing it to somebody who may not be a breast cancer expert, who may be a breast cancer survivor or something like that. So just make sure that you're thinking about your reviewers. And also, don't take for granted that reviewers know details about specifics of the disease, for example, lymphedema, the specifics of cancer staging, breast density, etc. Give a brief description and write for a lay person, for a non-medical audience. And again, allow plenty of time. I really, really will feel terribly if somebody is in the process at 5 p.m. on November 29th and they're not able to get it in before then. So please give yourself plenty of time. If you need any help at any point, please reach out to me. My phone number is there, my email address is there, it's also on the website, and it's in the RFA as well. So please, please, please don't hesitate to reach out at any point, especially before you get frustrated. There are some things, particularly with our system with GEMS, that might not make sense why it's doing something the way it did. Please reach out to me and I am more than happy to walk you through whatever you need. And also for any organizations that might be new or might have a new person completing their application for the first time this year, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm more than happy to talk with someone by phone and walk them through the different steps to make sure that you have all of the information you need. There's also the GEMS applicant manual. It is up on our website on the how to apply for grants section. That has great step-by-step steps for anything you might need to do with pictures. And so please don't hesitate to look through that. And remember to follow the steps in GEMS exactly as written. And that is all that I have for right now with the questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my page, and I see that we have a question. So I'm going to look for that. And then if anybody else has questions, the chat feature is at the bottom. Let's see, where did that question go? Yeah, so somebody had asked if these slides will be available for download. They will. They'll be on our website within the next couple of days, as well as the recording for this. And if anybody else has any questions, you can go ahead and ask. I can answer them now, or I can answer them at another time. You're always welcome to email me. My email is rtollefson@komennewengland.org.